The galaxy had seen many dangerous creatures before, but nothing like the Vrexpack hunters. They stood 9 feet tall on 6 powerful legs, with claws that could tear through metal and senses that could detect a heartbeat from miles away. Their dark skin looked like armor, and their yellow eyes never missed anything. When they moved together as a pack, they were death itself. For 3 months now, 7 Rex hunters had blocked all travel to the Kepler 442 star system. This system had valuable resources that many alien races needed: mining ships, trade vessels, and exploration craft all tried to reach the planets there. None made it past the Vrexpack. The hunters destroyed every ship that came close to their territory. The Zilnari Federation tried first. They had the best technology in the galaxy. Their ships could turn invisible and fly without making any sound. The Zilnari thought their stealth ships would easily slip past the Vrex hunters. They were wrong. The pack found every stealth ship within minutes and destroyed them all. Not one Zilnari pilot survived to tell what happened. Next came the hegemony military forces. They believed in strength and numbers. If stealth would not work, then overwhelming firepower would. The hegemony sent 50 of their best warships with their most experienced commanders. They attacked the Virex territory from 6 different directions. At the same time, the Vrexpack destroyed all 50 ships in less than 2 hours. The hunters worked together perfectly, moving like parts of one deadly machine. They knew exactly where each hegemony ship would be and what it would do next. The military commanders had no chance against enemies who seemed to read their minds. Other alien races tried different approaches. The Nathari attempted to negotiate, sending diplomatic ships with messages of peace. The Vrex hunters destroyed the diplomatic vessels without even listening to the messages. The crystal beings called the Vorlak tried using their psychic powers to confuse the hunters. The Vrex killed them too. Every failure taught the galaxy something new about how dangerous the Vrex really were. These were not simple wild animals. They were intelligent predators who had evolved over millions of years to hunt and kill. Their home planet had made them perfect killers, and now they used those skills in space. Dr. Nithara was the only being who truly understood what they faced. She was a Vrex herself, but different from the hunters. Years ago, scientists had found her badly injured on a damaged ship. They saved her life and learned that not all Vrex were pack hunters. Some, like Dr. Nithara, were researchers and thinkers. She lived now on a space station where she studied her own species and tried to help other races understand them. Dr. Nithara explained that pack hunters like those blocking Kepler 442 saw all other life forms as either food or enemies. They did not negotiate or show mercy. They only knew how to hunt, kill, and survive. You must understand, Dr. Nithara told the Galactic Council during an emergency meeting. These hunters have never been prey. Nothing in their evolution has ever successfully hunted them. They do not know what it feels like to be afraid or to run away. This makes them incredibly dangerous, but it might also be their weakness. The Galactic Council did not understand what she meant. How could never being prey be a weakness? The counselors asked her to explain, but Dr. Nithara could only shake her head. She did not know the answer herself. She only knew that somewhere, in the pack hunter's perfection, lay a flaw that the right enemy might exploit. Then the situation became much worse. A large passenger ship called the Star of Peace was traveling through nearby space when the Vrex pack caught it. The ship carried 847 people from 12 different alien races. There were families with children, elderly travelers, and workers going to new jobs on distant planets. The pack hunters did not kill the passengers immediately. Instead, they dragged the Star of Peace deep into their territory and kept everyone alive as prisoners. The Wrecks were using the ship as bait to attract rescue attempts. Any ship that came to save the passengers would be destroyed, and the hunters would have more victims. Several rescue missions tried anyway. Brave volunteers from different species attempted to reach the Star of Peace and bring the passengers to safety. The Wrecks pack killed them all. Each failed rescue mission made the hunters more confident and more dangerous. The galaxy watched in horror as their best pilots, soldiers, and ships proved useless against the 7 Wrecks hunters. News reports showed the pack's territory on star maps, marking it as a zone of death that no one could enter. The red boundary lines around Kepler 442 became a symbol of the galaxy's helplessness. Military experts studied every detail of the failed missions. They analyzed sensor readings, flight patterns, and combat recordings. Nothing they learned helped them understand how to defeat the pack. The Wrecks hunters seemed to know what their enemies would do before the enemies knew it themselves. Scientists tried to find technological solutions. They built new types of sensors that might detect Wreck ships. They designed weapons that could fire faster and hit harder. They created communication systems that might confuse the hunters' coordination. None of it worked. The pack adapted to every new technology within days. Some suggested using nuclear weapons or planet-killing devices to eliminate the entire Kepler 442 system. But this would destroy the valuable resources everyone needed and kill the 847 prisoners aboard the Star of Peace. The Galactic Council refused to consider such extreme measures. As weeks passed, hope began to fade. The greatest minds in the galaxy had tried everything they could think of. The most advanced civilizations had sent their best forces. All had failed against 7 alien hunters who seemed impossible to defeat. The Wrecks pack grew bolder. They began sending hunting parties to attack ships in nearby systems. It seemed like they were expanding their territory, claiming more space for themselves. Soon, the entire region around Kepler 442 would be under their control. Dr. Nithara spent her days studying the pack's behavior patterns, hoping to find some weakness that others had missed. She watched recordings of their attacks and analyzed their communication signals. The pack's coordination was flawless, their timing perfect, their instincts sharp beyond belief, yet something bothered her about their perfection. In nature, nothing was truly perfect. Every predator had limits. Every hunter had blind spots. The pack hunters seemed to have none, but Dr. Nithara knew this could not be completely true. Somewhere in their strength lay a flaw. She just could not see what it was. The galaxy prepared for the worst. If the Wrecks pack could not be stopped, they might spread across many star systems. Trade routes would close, colonies would be abandoned, and entire civilizations might fall to the hunters' endless appetite for death. But unknown to the Galactic Council, help was coming from an unexpected source. The human race, still new to galactic politics, was preparing to send their own mission to Kepler 442. They would not send advanced technology or overwhelming force like the others had tried. Instead, they would send one man with a very different approach to the problem. Captain Park So-young sat in her command chair aboard the human starship Soul's Pride, reading mission files that made no sense to her. The ship was humanity's contribution to the joint rescue effort for the Star of Peace. But their orders were unlike anything other alien races had tried. While the Zilnari had sent their most advanced stealth technology and the hegemony had deployed massive battle fleets, Earth Strategic Command had given Park a single instruction: find Lee Tae-min. Park had never heard of this man before receiving her orders. According to his file, Lee Tae-min was 28 years old, born in Seoul, and had served in the Korean military for 6 years before leaving the service. Since then, he worked as a freelance tracker, taking contracts to find missing people or lost cargo throughout human space. The file contained no information about advanced combat training or special weapons skills. Tae-min had never commanded a warship or led troops in battle. His background seemed ordinary compared to the heroes and geniuses that other species had sent against the Vrex pack. Dr. Kim Jae-won, the ship's xenobiologist, was even more confused about their mission. He had spent months studying Vrex biology and behavior, trying to understand how the pack hunters could be so effective. The creatures had senses that worked far better than human technology. They could detect heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, and chemical traces that most ships could not even measure. "Captain," Dr. Kim said during a briefing meeting, "I do not understand how one human tracker could succeed where entire fleets have failed. The Vrex can smell fear from space. They can hear heartbeats through metal walls. They have evolved for millions of years to be perfect hunters." Park shared his doubts, but she had learned to trust Earth's strategic command. Human leaders often saw solutions that others missed. They had a way of approaching problems from unexpected angles. If they believed Lee Tae-min could help, there must be a good reason. The soul's pride traveled to the Proxima system, where intelligence reports placed Tae-min completing a tracking contract. Park found him on mining station Alpha 7, a rough place where asteroid miners and cargo smugglers met to do business that was not always legal. When Park first saw Lee Tae-min, she was disappointed. He was not tall or muscular like the soldiers, she commanded. He moved quietly through the station's crowded corridors, wearing simple clothes that helped him blend in with the crowd. His dark eyes watched everything around him, but he seemed relaxed and calm. Tae-min was finishing a job for the station administrator. A group of smugglers had been stealing valuable minerals from mining operations for 3 months. Station security could not catch them because the thieves seemed to know exactly when and where security patrols would be. Park watched Tae-min work and began to understand why Earth Command had chosen him. He did not use advanced sensors or tracking devices. Instead, he spent days observing the smugglers' behavior patterns. He learned their schedules, their habits, and their preferred hiding places. He studied how they moved and where they felt safe. When Tae-min finally acted, the smugglers never saw him coming. He appeared in their secret warehouse like a ghost, documenting their stolen goods and calling station security. The thieves were so surprised that they offered no resistance. They had been watching for security patrols and technological surveillance, not for one quiet man who moved like a shadow. After completing his contract, Tae-min met with Park in a private room aboard the Soul's Pride. She explained the situation at Kepler 442 and showed him recordings of failed rescue attempts. Tae-min watched the videos carefully, paying attention to details that others had overlooked. Every species that tried to rescue the prisoners used the same approach, Tae-min said quietly. They treated the Vrex like an obstacle to overcome, with force or technology. But the pack hunters are not obstacles. They are predators, and predators follow patterns. Dr. Kim joined the conversation, eager to understand Tae-min's thinking. But the Vrex have senses far superior to anything humans possess. They can detect ships from distances that our best sensors cannot match. How can you hide from creatures? Who can sense things we cannot even measure? Taemin smiled slightly. I do not plan to hide from them, Doctor. I plan to become something they do not recognize as a threat. This answer confused both Park and Dr. Kim. Every failed rescue mission had tried to avoid detection by the Vrex pack. Stealth technology, long-range attacks, and rapid strikes had all failed because the hunters could sense them coming. How could Taemin succeed by not hiding? The Vrex are perfect predators, Taemin explained. They have evolved to hunt and kill everything they encounter. But being perfect predators means they have never been prey themselves. They do not know what it feels like to be hunted. Dr. Kim frowned. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Creatures who have never been. Prey do not know fear or caution. Exactly, Taemin said. They do not know fear, but they also do not know how to recognize when something is hunting them. Every failed rescue attempt approached them like prey, trying to escape a predator. I will approach them like a predator studying other predators, Park. Began to understand the logic behind Earth Command's decision. While other species had tried to outfight or outrun the Vrex, humans would try to outthink them. It was a dangerous gamble, but it might be the only approach that had not been tried yet. Engineer Choi Min-ho, Taemin's closest friend, joined the mission to provide technical support. Min-ho had worked with Taemin on several tracking contracts and understood how his mind worked. While others saw impossible odds, Taemin saw puzzles waiting to be solved. The hardest part will be patience, Taemin told the crew during mission planning. Every other rescue attempt has been rushed. They tried to reach the prisoners quickly before the Vrex could react. But speed makes you predictable. The pack hunters have learned to expect fast-moving threats. Dr. Kim studied the biological data about Vrex senses and hunting behavior. If you move slowly, they will still detect you. Their sensors can track objects moving at any speed. Their sensors can detect me, Taemin agreed. But their minds might not recognize me as a threat if I move the right way. Predators ignore things that do not trigger their hunting instincts. The challenge is becoming something that registers on their sensors but not in their minds. The plan seemed impossible to Park. The Virex pack had destroyed ships using the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. They had defeated massive military fleets and killed the best pilots from dozens of different species. How could one human succeed where everyone else had failed? But as she watched Taemin prepare for the mission, Park began to have hope. He approached the problem differently than anyone else had. While other rescue attempts had focused on their own capabilities, Taemin focused entirely on understanding his enemies. He studied every recording of Vrex pack behavior. He memorized their movement patterns and communication signals. He analyzed the timing of their attacks and the coordination of their responses. Slowly, he began to build a mental map of how the pack hunters thought and reacted. They are not just intelligent, Taemin told Park after days of study. They are perfectly adapted to their role as apex predators. But adaptation to one environment can create blind spots in another. The Vrex evolved on their home planet, not in space. They have learned to hunt in vacuum, but their deepest instincts are still shaped by their evolution. Park approved the mission, knowing it might be the last chance to save the 847 prisoners aboard the Star of Peace. The Soul's Pride began its journey to Kepler 442, carrying humanity's strangest weapon, one quiet man who believed he could hunt the greatest hunters in the galaxy. Lee Taemin's approach to the Kepler 442 system broke every rule of space combat and rescue operations. While other missions had rushed toward their targets with maximum speed and firepower, Taemin chose to move slower than anyone thought possible. His Ship was a modified scout vessel that engineer Choi Min-ho had stripped of all unnecessary systems. They removed the heavy weapons, the advanced communication arrays, and most of the defensive shields. What remained was a small, lightweight craft that could drift through space almost silently. The Soul's Pride waited at the edge of the star system while Tai-min began his infiltration. Captain Park. So Young watched her tactical displays with growing anxiety as his tiny ship disappeared into the dark space around Kepler 442. She had committed her mission to a plan that seemed like suicide. For the first 72 hours, Tai-min did absolutely nothing except observe. His ship drifted at the very edge of Rex territory, using only passive sensors that received signals without sending any. He watched and listened as the pack hunters patrolled their domain with mathematical precision. Dr. Kim Jae-won monitored the data feeds from Tai-min's ship, trying to understand what the human tracker was learning. The 7 Vrex vessels moved, in patterns that seemed random at first, but gradually revealed their underlying structure. Each hunter covered specific areas of space, their routes overlapping to ensure that nothing could pass undetected. The pack coordination is perfect, Dr. Kim reported to Captain Park. They have divided their territory into 7 zones with overlapping coverage. Any ship trying to enter the system will be detected by at least 2 hunters simultaneously. But Tai-min was not looking at the Vrex coordination. He was studying the individual hunters, learning how each one moved and reacted. Through careful observation, he identified subtle differences in their patrol patterns. Some hunters preferred wider sweeps, while others made tighter turns. Some reacted quickly to sensor contacts, while others took time to investigate. "They are not a machine," Tai-min reported to the Soul's Pride. "They are 7 individuals working together. Each one has learned to hunt in slightly different ways. Those differences create tiny gaps in their coverage." Engineer Choi Min-ho helped analyze the patrol data, looking for patterns that might be exploited. "The gaps are measured in seconds, Tai-min. Even if you time everything perfectly, you would need to move exactly when and where the patterns align. One mistake and the entire pack will converge on your position." "I know," Tai-min replied calmly. "That is why I am taking time to learn their rhythms. Rushing would be fatal." The waiting was hardest for Captain Park. Every hour that passed meant more suffering for the 847 prisoners aboard the Star of Peace. Intelligence reports suggested that the Vrex were not feeding their captives regularly, using hunger and thirst as additional weapons of psychological warfare. Other alien observers monitored Tai-min's progress from safe distances. The Zilnari Federation had ships watching to see if human methods would succeed where their stealth technology had failed. The hegemony military commanders studied the human approach, looking for tactics they could adapt to their own forces. Most observers expected Tai-min to fail within the first few days. Previous rescue attempts had been detected and destroyed as soon as they entered Vrex territory. The fact that his ship remained undetected for 72 hours was already unprecedented, but everyone assumed it was only a matter of time before. The pack hunters found him. Dr. Nith Ara watched the mission from her research station with intense interest. As the only Vrex researcher, not part of a hunting pack, she understood pack psychology better than any other being in the galaxy. What she saw in Tai-min's approach fascinated and terrified her. "He is not trying to hide from them," she told her research team. "He is studying them like a scientist studies animals in their natural habitat. But if the pack realizes they are being observed, their reaction will be extreme." After 3 days of observation, Taimin began his actual approach to the inner system. His ship started moving with a pattern that seemed completely random to outside observers. Instead of following straight lines or predictable curves, he drifted with the natural gravitational flows around asteroids and space debris. The movement looked chaotic, but it was actually precisely calculated. Taimin had identified the natural paths that objects followed through the Kepler 442 system when pushed by gravity and solar winds. By matching these patterns, his ship became almost indistinguishable from space junk. Engineer Choi Min-ho monitored the ship's systems as they approached the first Vrex patrol zone. The sensors showed a hunter vessel passing within 5 kilometers of their position. At that distance, the Vrex should have detected them easily. Their instruments should have identified the ship's heat signature, electromagnetic emissions, and mass displacement. Contact passing overhead, Choi Min-ho whispered into his communication device. Distance 4.7 kilometers and closing. Taimin made no reply. His ship continued drifting with apparent randomness, using microthrusters to adjust its path in ways that mimicked natural gravitational effects. The Vrex hunter passed directly over their position, its sensors sweeping the area with mechanical precision. The hunter found nothing worth investigating. Its sensors detected the mass of Taimin's ship, but the object moved like debris and showed no signs of active propulsion or life support. The Vrex mind, trained to hunt living prey, dismissed it as unimportant background noise. Captain Park watched her displays in amazement as the first Vrex patrol passed without incident. How is this possible? Their sensors should have detected him immediately. Dr. Kim had been studying the sensor readings from Taimin's ship. The Vrex sensors are working perfectly. They are detecting his ship's mass, heat, and electromagnetic signature, but their brains are filtering out the information because it does not match their hunting patterns. This was the key insight that had escaped every previous rescue attempt. The Vrex were not just using technology to hunt their prey. They were using millions of years of evolved instincts to decide what deserved their attention. Those instincts had been shaped by hunting living creatures on their home planet, not by tracking artificial objects in space. Taimin's ship moved deeper into Vrex territory, passing through patrol zones that had been death traps for every previous rescue mission. Each time a hunter approached, Taimin adjusted his movement to match natural debris patterns. The Vrex sensors detected him, but their predator minds dismissed him as irrelevant. "This is impossible," reported a Zilnari observer to his command ship. "The human vessel is passing through areas where our best stealth ships were detected and destroyed. How are they avoiding discovery?" The answer was that Taimin was not avoiding discovery. He was avoiding recognition. The Vrex pack could see him, but they could not understand what they were seeing. Their perfect predator instincts had become a limitation that prevented them from recognizing a new type of threat. After 18 hours of careful movement, Taimin's ship reached the middle zones of Vrex territory. He was now closer to the captured Star of Peace than any rescue mission had ever come. The ship's passive sensors could detect the transport vessel in the distance, still guarded by the pack's alpha leader. "I can see the target," Taimin reported to the Soul's Pride. "Beginning final approach phase." Captain Park felt her heart racing as she watched the tactical displays. Taimin had achieved the impossible by reaching this far into Vrex territory, undetected. But the hardest part of the mission still lay ahead. The inner system, where the prisoners waited, was the pack's core territory, where all 7 hunters could respond within minutes. This was where every previous rescue attempt had died. 36 hours into his infiltration, Lee Tae-min entered the most dangerous phase of the mission. The inner system around Kepler 442 was the pack's core territory, where the 7 Vrex hunters could coordinate their deadliest responses. This was the killing ground where every previous rescue attempt had met its end. The captured transport ship Star of Peace hung in space like a trapped animal, surrounded by the invisible web of Vrex patrol patterns. Kethvar, the pack's alpha leader, maintained his position near the prisoner ship, ready to coordinate the pack's response to any threat. His massive vessel dwarfed the transport, a constant reminder of the hunter's power. Tae-min had spent 36 hours learning to think like a Vrex. Through careful observation and Dr. Nithara's behavioral data, he had identified each pack, member's individual role and personality. The pack was not just 7 identical hunters working together. Each member had developed specialized skills and preferred tactics. 2 hunters patrolled the outer boundaries of the territory, sweeping wide arcs that would catch approaching threats from any direction. 2 more covered the middle zones with overlapping patterns that left no gaps for intruders to exploit. The remaining 2 functioned as rapid response units, ready to reinforce any position where prey might be detected. But Kethvar was the key to everything. As the Alpha, he coordinated all pack activities through subsonic communication calls that the other hunters obeyed without question. His position near the Star of Peace allowed him to oversee the entire territory while keeping the prisoners under direct control. Previous rescue attempts had failed because they approached the situation like a military problem. They tried to overcome the pack's coordination through superior force or advanced technology. But Tae-min understood that he was not facing a military unit. He was confronting a family of apex predators whose coordination came from millions of years of evolutionary development. Instead of trying to avoid detection entirely, Tae-min began the most dangerous part of his plan. He started creating subtle, psychological pressure on the pack by allowing his ship to generate minor sensor contacts at the very edge of their detection range. These contacts were too brief and weak to trigger an immediate response, but strong enough to create subliminal awareness that something was wrong. Engineer Choi Min-ho monitored the ship's systems as Tae-min deliberately made himself partially visible to Vrex sensors. "Are you sure about this? You are giving them chances to detect us." "I am not trying to stay invisible," Tae-min replied quietly. "I am trying to make them feel uncomfortable without knowing why." This psychological approach was based on Tae-min's understanding of predator behavior. The Vrex had evolved as apex predators who had never been prey themselves. They had no experience with being hunted, which meant they had no defenses against the psychological effects of being stalked. Dr. Kim Jae-won watched the sensor data from the Soul's Pride, trying to understand what Tae-min was accomplishing. The brief contacts appeared random, but they were actually carefully timed to coincide with moments when individual pack members were at the edges of their patrol routes, separated from immediate support. The effect on the pack was subtle but measurable. Individual hunters began making small adjustments to their patrol patterns, trying to investigate feelings they could not identify. A hunter would change course slightly to check an area where sensors had detected something unusual, only to find nothing there. "The pack coordination is showing microscopic variations," Dr. Kim reported to Captain Park. "Individual hunters are deviating from their standard patterns by fractions of degrees. These deviations were tiny, measured in seconds, and small course changes, but they created momentary gaps in the pack's perfect coverage. Taemin exploited these gaps with mathematical precision, moving his ship through spaces that existed for only brief moments when two patrol patterns failed to overlap perfectly. Kethvar was the first to sense that something was wrong. His evolutionary role as pack leader made him sensitive to changes in his hunter's behavior. The Alpha began sending questioning calls to his pack members, asking for reports about unusual sensor contacts. The individual hunters responded with confusion. They reported detecting objects that vanished when investigated. Sensor returns appeared and disappeared without explanation. Each hunter was experiencing these anomalies individually, so they seemed like equipment malfunctions rather than a coordinated threat. This confusion was exactly what Taemin had hoped to create. The Vrex Pack's greatest strength was their perfect coordination and communication, but that coordination depended on clear, reliable information. When individual pack members began reporting contradictory sensor data, the pack's decision-making process became slower and less certain. Taemin moved deeper into the inner system, using the pack's growing confusion to mask his approach. Each time a hunter investigated a false sensor return, he adjusted his position to take advantage of the temporary gap in coverage. His movements were measured in meters and seconds, requiring perfect timing and nerves of steel. Captain Park watched the tactical display with growing tension. Taemin's ship was now closer to the Star of Peace than any rescue mission had ever reached, but he was also deeper in enemy territory, surrounded by 7 apex predators who could destroy him instantly if they realized what was happening. "Contact!" reported one of the outer patrol hunters, responding to another of Taemin's deliberate sensor ghosts. The hunter changed course to investigate, pulling slightly away from its assigned patrol zone. Taemin immediately exploited the eye gap, moving his ship through the area the hunter had just abandoned. His timing was perfect, but the margin for error was measured in seconds. If the Vrex hunter returned to its patrol route even slightly early, Taemin would be caught in the open with no escape. Dr. Nithara monitored the mission from her research station, watching pack behavior patterns that no other being in the galaxy could fully understand. What she saw filled her with both admiration and terror. "He is not just infiltrating their territory," she told her research team. "He is hunting them. He is using their own predator psychology against them in ways that should be impossible." The pack's confusion continued to grow as Taemin created more false contacts and phantom sensor returns. Individual hunters began questioning their own perceptions, wondering if their equipment was malfunctioning or if their senses were playing tricks on them. This psychological uncertainty had an effect that even Taemin had not fully anticipated. The pack hunters began to doubt not just their sensors, but each other's reports. When one hunter reported detecting something unusual, the others were less likely to believe it. The pack's communication and coordination started to show hairline cracks. Kethvar sensed the growing problem but could not identify its source. His pack was experiencing something that had never happened in their evolutionary history. They were feeling uncertainty and doubt, emotions that apex predators had never needed to develop. Taemin's ship reached the inner boundary of the core territory, less than 50 kilometers from the Star of Peace. He could see the transport vessel on his passive sensors, along with the massive shape of Kethvar's ship standing guard beside it. The Alpha's vessel was 3 times larger than Taemin's scout ship, armed with weapons that could vaporize his craft in seconds. But size and firepower were not the only factors that mattered in this confrontation. For the first time in their species' history, the Vrex pack hunters were facing an enemy who understood their psychology better than they understood themselves. Cathvar felt something that no member of his species had experienced in millions of years of evolution. The pack alpha could not name the feeling because his language had no word for it. Humans would have called it unease. But to a Vrex hunter, who had never been prey, it was something completely unknown. The pack leader's massive ship hung in space near the captured Star of Peace, his yellow eyes scanning sensor displays that showed nothing unusual. But his instincts screamed warnings that his rational mind could not understand. Something was wrong in his territory, something that threatened the pack in ways he could not identify. Individual pack members continued to report strange sensor contacts that vanished when investigated. Equipment that had worked perfectly for months was now showing phantom readings and false returns. Each hunter was experiencing these problems alone, which made them seem like random malfunctions rather than a coordinated threat. But Cathvar had not become pack leader by ignoring his instincts. Millions of years of predator evolution had given him senses that went beyond technology. His DNA carried the accumulated hunting wisdom of countless generations of apex predators, and every fiber of his being was telling him that something was stalking his pack. The realization hit him like a physical blow. For the first time in his species' evolutionary history, a Vrex pack was being hunted. The thought was so alien, so completely outside their understanding of how the universe worked, that Cathvar's mind struggled to process it. His response was immediate and terrifying. The Alpha sent out a subsonic hunting call that every pack member felt in their bones. It was not a patrol order or a standard communication. It was the ancient call to pack hunt, a signal that had not been used since their species had eliminated the last predators on their home world. All 7 Vrex ships abandoned their careful patrol patterns and shifted into active hunting mode. Their formation tightened as they began sweeping the inner system with aggressive sensor scans. The hunters moved with the coordinated precision of a pack that had found dangerous prey and was closing in for the kill. Taemin felt the change immediately. His passive sensors detected the pack's movement as they converged on the inner system. Where moments before there had been predictable patrol routes and individual hunters, now there was a unified killing machine focused entirely on finding whatever dared to threaten them. "They know," he reported quietly to Engineer Choi Min-ho. "The pack has shifted to active hunting. For any other rescue mission, this moment would have meant certain death. The combined attention of 7 Vrex hunters had never failed to locate and destroy any threat. Their coordinated sensor sweeps could detect a heartbeat through meters of metal and track a single electron across space. But Taemin had prepared for this moment. The instant the pack shifted from patrol to hunt mode, he shut down every active system on his ship except for life support. His vessel went completely silent, drifting with only the momentum it already carried. The Vrex hunters swept through the inner system like a storm of destruction. Their sensors probed every piece of debris, every asteroid, and every cubic meter of empty space. They used active scanning beams that could penetrate ship hulls and detect life signs at impossible distances. Captain Park So-young watched from the Soul's Pride as the pack's hunting formation moved through the system. Her tactical displays showed 7 massive signatures converging on the area where Taemin's ship was located. The human vessel had vanished from her sensors the moment it went silent. "I have lost contact with the infiltration team," reported the communications officer. "No signal from Taemin's ship." Park gripped her command chair as she watched the Vrex hunter search the area where her people were hiding. Every instinct told her to order the Soul's Pride forward to provide support, but she knew that would only doom them all. Taemin's Mission depended on remaining invisible, and any rescue attempt would reveal his position. Dr. Kim Jae-won monitored the pack's behavior from his science station. The hunting formation is perfect. They are covering every possible hiding place, with overlapping search patterns. Nothing could escape detection in that kind of sweep. But Taemin was not trying to hide from the Vrek's sensors. He was hiding from their minds. His ship drifted among the debris and asteroids of the inner system, moving only with natural momentum. To the pack's sensors, he appeared to be just another piece of space junk, no different from the countless fragments of rock and metal that filled the system. The psychological effect of being hunted was having a devastating impact on the pack's coordination. Individual hunters were making decisions based on instinct rather than pack discipline. Some swept areas multiple times, driven by the compulsion to find prey that they knew must be present. Others rushed toward sensor contacts without waiting, for pack coordination. For 27 minutes, the pack searched with increasing frustration. Their sensors detected nothing that matched their expectations of how prey should behave. The phantom contacts and false returns had stopped, but the feeling of being stalked remained. The hunters could sense a predator in their territory, but could not locate it. Kethvar's communications became increasingly aggressive as his pack failed to find their stalker. The Alpha sent sharp commands to individual hunters, demanding explanations for their inability to locate the threat. But the pack members had no answers to give. They were experiencing something completely outside their evolutionary programming. During this chaos, Taemin made his most dangerous move. While the pack's attention was focused on active hunting, he used micro-thrusters to adjust his trajectory toward the Star of Peace. The movement was barely detectable, hidden among the natural drift of debris through the system's gravitational field. Engineer Choi Min-ho monitored their approach to the transport ship, calculating distances and timing with mathematical precision. 43 kilometers to target. At current drift rate, we will reach docking distance in 18 minutes. But 18 minutes was an eternity when surrounded by 7 frustrated apex predators. The pack continued their aggressive search, their formation growing more chaotic as individual hunters responded to instinct rather than discipline. Dr. Nithara watched the pack's behavior from her research station with a mixture of fascination and horror. She was witnessing the psychological breakdown of the most perfect predators in galactic history. The pack hunters had never faced an enemy who could turn their own instincts against them. "This should not be possible," she told her research team. "Pack cohesion is the foundation of Vrek's hunting success. Without coordination, they are just 7 individual predators competing with each other." That competition was exactly what Taemin had hoped to create. As the pack's frustration grew, individual hunters began to prioritize their own sensor contacts over pack objectives. They stopped sharing information efficiently and started making independent decisions about where to search. The Alpha Kethvar recognized what was happening to his pack, but his attempts to restore discipline only made things worse. His aggressive commands increased the stress on individual hunters, making them more likely to act on instinct rather than follow orders. 15 minutes after the pack hunt began, Taemin's ship reached critical proximity to the Star of Peace. He could see the transport vessel clearly now, along with the 847 prisoners trapped inside. But he could also see Kethvar's massive ship positioned directly between him and the rescue target. The pack was still searching aggressively, but their formation had spread out as individual hunters pursued different leads. For the first time since the siege began, gaps were appearing in their coverage. The pack's greatest strength was becoming their weakness as coordination broke down under psychological pressure. Tae-min prepared for the most dangerous part of his mission. To rescue the prisoners, he would have to approach the Star of Peace directly, bringing him within detection range of the Alpha's ship. One mistake would alert Kethvar to his presence and bring the entire pack down on his position. But the pack leader was no longer the calm, controlled predator who had maintained perfect discipline for months. Kethvar was experiencing doubt and uncertainty for the first time in his life. His perfect predator confidence had been shaken by an enemy he could not see or understand. It was time for Tae-min to exploit that weakness. The moment had come for the most critical phase of Lee Tae-min's mission. The captured transport Star of Peace hung in space directly ahead, its hull scarred from months of captivity. Inside, 847 beings from 12 different species waited for rescue that every expert in the galaxy believed was impossible. Kethvar's massive ship dominated the space around the transport, positioned to maintain perfect oversight of both the prisoners and his pack's territory. The Alpha had chosen his location carefully, making it impossible for any conventional rescue attempt to reach the Star of Peace without first defeating the pack leader himself. But Tae-min's approach was unlike anything the Vrex had encountered before. Instead of attacking Kethvar directly, he began implementing the most psychologically sophisticated phase of his plan. He would hunt the individual pack members while avoiding the Alpha, using tactics that exploited the fundamental weakness. In pack psychology, the key insight came from Dr. Nithara's research into Vrex behavior. Pack hunters were accustomed to decisive encounters where they either killed their prey quickly or were forced to abandon the hunt. The concept of a prolonged stalking campaign, where prey turned predator and engaged in psychological warfare, was completely outside their evolutionary experience. Tae-min's ship emerged from its hiding place among the system debris, but not to make a direct approach to the Star of Peace. Instead, he began stalking individual pack members who had spread out during their frustrated search. His first target was a hunter operating alone at the edge of the inner system. Using micro-thrusters and careful timing, Tae-min positioned his ship to create a brief sensor contact on the hunter's instruments. The contact lasted exactly 3 seconds before vanishing, just long enough to register as a potential threat, but too brief for the hunter to get a targeting lock. The Vrex hunter immediately changed course to investigate, following standard pack protocol for potential prey contacts. But when it reached the location where the sensor return had occurred, nothing was there. The hunter's instruments showed only empty space and drifting debris. Tae-min had already moved to a new position, using the hunter's predictable response pattern to stay ahead of its search. When the frustrated Vrex began sweeping the area more aggressively, Tae-min created another brief contact in a completely different location, forcing the hunter to abandon its current search and start over. Engineer Choi Min-ho monitored the psychological game from his position aboard Tae-min's ship. The hunter is showing signs of confusion. Its search pattern is becoming more erratic. Good, Tae-min replied quietly. Confusion leads to mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities. The effect on the targeted hunter was exactly what Tae-min had hoped for. Vrex psychology was built around successful hunts and decisive kills. When a hunt became prolonged and frustrating, individual hunters began to doubt their own abilities. This self-doubt was something their species had never needed to evolve defenses against. Kethvar noticed his pack members' erratic behavior and sent sharp communication calls demanding explanations. But the hunter could not explain what was happening to it. The sensor contacts were real but disappeared too quickly to analyze. The prey seemed to be present, but remained invisible to active hunting. While the first hunter struggled with psychological confusion, Taemin shifted his attention to a second pack member. This hunter was operating in a different part of the inner system, following its own search pattern with mechanical precision. Taemin approached it using the same tactics, creating brief sensor contacts that vanished before they could be properly investigated. The second hunter's response was different from the first. Instead of becoming confused, it became aggressive, sweeping larger areas with increasingly powerful sensor beams. But aggression without a clear target only wasted energy and created more frustration. The hunter began making wider search patterns that left gaps in coverage. Dr. Kim Jae-won watched the pack's deteriorating coordination from the soul's pride, amazed by what he was witnessing. Individual pack members are losing synchronization with each other. Their search patterns are beginning to overlap inefficiently. This breakdown in coordination was the effect Taemin had worked to create since the beginning of his mission. The Vrex Pack's greatest strength came from their ability to work together as a perfectly coordinated unit. When that coordination began to fail, they became less effective than the sum of their individual parts. Kethvar recognized the danger to his pack and attempted to restore discipline through dominant displays and aggressive commands. But his efforts only increased the stress on individual hunters who were already struggling with psychological pressure they did not understand. The Alpha's attempts at control created a feedback loop that made the situation worse. The more aggressively he commanded his pack, the more anxious and confused individual hunters became. Their performance declined further, which triggered even more aggressive commands from their increasingly frustrated leader. Taemin exploited this psychological spiral by targeting a third pack member than a fourth. Each hunter he stalked became less effective, creating gaps in the pack's coverage that he could use to approach the Star of Peace more closely. The cumulative effect on pack psychology was devastating. 7 individual hunters who had worked together with perfect coordination for months were now competing with each other rather than cooperating. They began interfering with each other's search patterns, creating near collisions and communication conflicts. Dr. Nithara monitored the pack's breakdown from her research station, documenting behavior that no Vrex researcher had ever observed before. The pack hierarchy is becoming unstable. Individual hunters are beginning to question the Alpha's leadership. This was the critical moment Taemin had been working toward. Vrex pack structure depended on absolute confidence in the Alpha's ability to lead successful hunts. When that confidence was shaken, the entire social structure could collapse rapidly. Kethvar made the mistake that Taemin had been waiting for. Frustrated by his pack's deteriorating performance and desperate to restore his authority, the Alpha abandoned his guard position near the Star of Peace to personally lead a hunting sweep. For the first time since the siege began, the transport ship was unguarded. Taemin acted immediately, using micro-thrusters to accelerate toward the Star of Peace, while the entire pack was focused on hunting shadows in the opposite direction. His ship moved with the same careful precision he had used throughout the mission, but now speed was essential. The window of opportunity would last only minutes before Kethvar realized his mistake and returned to guard the prisoners. Taemin had to reach the transport, evacuate 847 beings, and escape before the pack could react to his presence. Captain Park So-young watched her tactical display as Taemin's ship finally appeared on her sensors, moving rapidly toward the Star of Peace. After days of invisible stalking, the rescue mission was entering its final phase. All ships prepare for emergency extraction, Park ordered her fleet. "The moment those prisoners are clear, we move in to provide cover." The most dangerous part of the mission was about to begin. Lee Tae-min's ship approached the Star of Peace with mechanical precision, every movement calculated to minimize detection time. The transport vessel floated in space like a wounded animal, its hull darkened by months of captivity under Vrex control. Inside, 847 beings from 12 different species waited for rescue that most had given up hoping would ever come. The docking sequence began immediately as Tae-min's scout ship connected with the transport's emergency airlock. Engineer Choi Min-ho worked rapidly to establish connection protocols that would allow them to interface with the Star of Peace's systems. They had less than 3 minutes before Kethvar would realize his mistake and return to guard the prisoners. Connection established, Choi Min-ho reported. Accessing the transport's passenger manifest and life support data. The numbers were staggering. 847 individuals representing the greatest diversity of galactic life ever assembled in one place. There were Zilnari diplomats with their crystalline thought processes, hegemony military families with their warrior traditions, crystal beings whose bodies could shatter under stress, and gas-form entities who required specialized containment. Systems Tae-min entered the Star of Peace through the emergency airlock and immediately faced the challenge that had made this rescue seem impossible. How do you evacuate nearly 800 beings in minutes when each species has different physical requirements, different communication methods, and different levels of stress tolerance? The answer lay in Tae-min's experience as a tracker and his understanding of behavior under pressure. Instead of trying to organize the evacuation like a military operation, he approached it like a psychological challenge. The prisoners needed leadership and direction, but they also needed hope. "I am Lee Tae-min from the Human Rescue Fleet," he announced through the transport's communication system, using translation protocols that converted his words into 12 different languages simultaneously. "Evacuation begins now. Follow the procedures that will be displayed on your screens." The reaction was immediate but chaotic. Months of captivity had left many prisoners in various states of psychological trauma. Some had given up hope entirely and were slow to respond. Others panicked at the sudden change in their situation. A few refused to believe that rescue was really possible and suspected a Vrex trick. But Tae-min had prepared for these reactions. His calm voice and precise instructions cut through the panic, providing the leadership that desperate beings needed. He did not promise that the rescue would be easy or safe. He simply told them what they needed to do to survive. "Evacuation pods are launching in 30-second intervals," he announced. "Follow the color-coded instructions on your screens. Move quickly but do not panic. Your survival depends on everyone working together." Engineer Choi Min-ho coordinated the technical aspects of the evacuation while monitoring Vrex pack movements. The hunters were still scattered across the inner system, pursuing phantom sensor contacts that Tae-min had created during his stalking campaign, but that confusion would not last much longer. "Pack member Alpha 3 is changing course," Choi Min-ho reported. "Looks like it is heading back toward our position." "Understood," Tae-min replied without breaking concentration. "Continue evacuation sequence." The first evacuation pods launched according to plan, each carrying between 15 and 30 passengers depending on their species' size and requirements. The pods were programmed with random trajectories that would scatter them across the system, making it impossible for the Vrex pack to pursue all of them simultaneously. Captain Park So-young monitored the evacuation from the Soul's Pride, watching as small blips appeared on her tactical display representing the escaping prisoners. Each pod that cleared the Star of Peace safely brought them closer to success, but also increased the chances that the Vrex would detect the rescue operation. The challenge was not just moving people quickly. It was managing the psychological state of beings who had been traumatized by months of captivity. Some prisoners froze in terror when they reached the evacuation pods, unable to enter what they saw as small, confined spaces. Others became aggressive, pushing ahead of weaker individuals in their desperation to escape. Taemin handled each crisis with the same calm efficiency he had shown throughout the mission. When a group of elderly Zilnari became too frightened to enter their evacuation pod, he personally escorted them aboard and explained exactly what would happen during their escape. When a hegemony military officer tried to take command of the evacuation, Taemin quietly but firmly redirected his energy toward helping other passengers. "Pod 7 away," Choi Min-ho reported. 2 minutes 30 seconds until Kethvar reaches visual range. The evacuation was proceeding faster than anyone had dared hope, but time was running out. Kethvar's massive ship was returning to the Star of Peace, drawn by some instinct that told the Alpha his prisoners were in danger. Once the pack leader reached visual range, he would immediately see the evacuation in progress. Dr. Kim Jae-won watched the tactical display from his science station, calculating distances and arrival times. The Alpha will be in sensor range in 90 seconds. He will detect the evacuation pods immediately. But Taemin had planned for this moment. The evacuation pods were not just scattering randomly across the system. They were following carefully, calculated trajectories that would bring them into range of the rescue fleet just as the Vrex pack began to respond. "Pod 12 away," Choi Min-ho announced. "That is 730 passengers evacuated. Remaining count, 117. The final group of prisoners included some of the most difficult cases. Several beings were too injured or sick to move quickly. Others were so traumatized by their captivity that they could not respond to evacuation instructions. A few insisted on staying behind to help others, refusing to save themselves while fellow prisoners remained in danger. Taemin worked through each case with methodical precision. He carried injured beings to their evacuation pods when they could not walk. He spoke calmly to traumatized individuals until they could follow instructions. When volunteers insisted on helping others, he gave them specific tasks that kept them moving toward the evacuation pods. "Alpha contact at 15 kilometers and closing," Choi Min-ho reported. "He will have visual confirmation in 45 seconds. The last evacuation pod launched with 37 passengers aboard, including the most severely injured and traumatized beings from the Star of Peace. Taemin watched it disappear into space, knowing that 847 lives now depended on the rescue fleet's ability to protect the scattered evacuation pods. "Evacuation complete," he announced to Captain Park. "All prisoners clear of the Star of Peace." But the rescue was far from over. Kethvar's ship was now close enough to see the empty transport and the evacuation pods spreading across the system. The Alpha's reaction was immediate and terrifying. His subsonic call echoed through space, summoning his scattered pack to converge on the rescue operation. 7 Vrex hunters began moving toward the evacuation pods with deadly purpose. Their confusion and psychological disorientation vanished the moment they had clear targets to hunt. The pack coordination that had been broken by Taemin's stalking campaign began to reassert itself as the hunters focused on destroying the escaping prisoners. Taemin's ship undocked from the Star of Peace just as Kethvar's massive vessel came into visual range. The Alpha's yellow eyes fixed on the small human ship, recognizing it as the source of all the pack's recent troubles. For the first time since the siege began, Kethvar had found his true prey. The pack leader's ship turned toward Taemin with killing intent, weapon systems charging for a decisive strike. But Taemin was not finished with his psychological warfare. He had one final card to play, a gambit that would exploit the fundamental difference between human and Vrex hunting instincts. Instead of running from the Alpha, Taemin turned his ship to face Kethvar directly. The small scout vessel, massively outgunned and outmatched, began accelerating toward the pack leader's ship as if to ram it. The action violated every principle of prey behavior that the Vrex had encountered in millions of years of evolution. Nothing had ever attacked an Alpha, pack leader directly. The psychological impact on Kethvar was immediate and devastating. The moment that Li Taemin turned his small scout ship toward Kethvar's massive vessel and began accelerating for what appeared to be a suicidal attack, something unprecedented happened in the history of Vrex evolution. The Alpha Pack leader experienced complete psychological disorientation. For millions of years, every creature the Vrex had encountered followed the same basic pattern when confronted by their superior hunting abilities. Prey animals fled. Enemy. Predators either retreated or engaged in defensive postures. Nothing in their evolutionary history had prepared them for prey that attacked an alpha hunter directly. Kethvar's yellow eyes widened as the small human ship approached his massive vessel at increasing speed. His weapon systems were charged and ready to fire. He could destroy the human ship with a single shot, but for a crucial fraction of a second, the Alpha hesitated. That hesitation was not fear in the way humans would understand it. It was something far more fundamental. Kethvar's predator instincts had no framework for processing an attack from what he perceived as prey. His mind struggled to categorize behavior that contradicted millions of years of genetic programming. In that moment of confusion, Taemin exploited the Alpha's psychological vulnerability to execute the most dangerous maneuver of his entire mission. Instead of actually ramming Kethvar's ship, he used the approach vector to slip past the Alpha's weapons and escape toward the rescue fleet. The pack leader's reaction was immediate and chaotic. Frustrated by his inability to understand what had just happened, Kethvar fired his weapons at empty space where Taemin's ship had been moments before. The powerful energy beams lit up the darkness but struck nothing. All pack members converge on the escaping pods, Kethvar commanded through subsonic communications that carried his rage and confusion across the entire system. Destroy every vessel that is not Vrex. But the damage to pack psychology had already been done. The other 6 hunters had witnessed their Alpha's moment of uncertainty, something that should have been impossible according to their understanding of pack hierarchy. Individual pack members began making independent decisions rather than following coordinated battle plans. Captain Park So-young watched the tactical display as the situation exploded into chaos around the Kepler 442 system. Vrex hunters were pursuing evacuation pods in multiple directions while the rescue fleet moved to intercept them. What should have been a coordinated attack became a series of individual hunting actions. All ships advance, Park commanded her fleet. Form defensive screen around the evacuation pods. Do not let any Vrex hunter reach the prisoners. The engagement that followed was unlike anything seen in galactic military history. Not because of superior technology or overwhelming force, but because one side was fighting as a coordinated unit, while the other had lost the psychological foundation that made coordination possible. Individual Vrex ships remained formidable opponents. Their weapons were powerful, their maneuverability excellent, and their individual hunting instincts still sharp. But they were no longer functioning as a pack. Each hunter pursued its own targets based on instinct rather than strategy. Dr. Kim Jae-won monitored the battle from his science station, documenting behavior that would reshape understanding of Vrex psychology. The pack coordination has completely broken down. Individual hunters are interfering with each other's attack runs. The rescue fleet, designed specifically for this type of operation, successfully intercepted the scattered Vrex hunters before they could reach most of the evacuation pods. The humans and their alien allies were not necessarily superior fighters, but they were working together, while their enemies were not. Taemin's ship weaved through the battle, still pursued by the increasingly frustrated Kethvar. The Alpha's attempts to destroy the small human vessel were hampered by his own psychological state. Every time he lined up for a killing shot, Taemin would make another unpredictable maneuver that confused the pack leader's hunting instincts. Engineer Choi Min-ho monitored their ship's systems as they dodged between energy beams and missile strikes. Hull temperature rising from near misses. How much longer can we keep this up? Until every prisoner is safe, Taemin replied calmly, executing another impossible turn that brought them past a pursuing Vrex hunter. The battle reached its climax when the rescue fleet successfully extracted the last evacuation pod from Vrex weapons range. All 847 prisoners were now safely aboard rescue ships that could outrun individual Vrex hunters. The mission that every expert had declared impossible was succeeding, but Kethvar was not finished. The Alpha's rage at being outmaneuvered by what he saw as inferior prey drove him to make increasingly desperate attacks. His massive ship pursued Taemin with single-minded fury, ignoring the broader tactical situation. This fixation on personal revenge rather than pack objectives was the final proof of how completely Taemin had broken the Alpha's psychological control. A functional pack leader would have coordinated his hunters to prevent the rescue fleet's escape. Instead, Kethvar wasted his pack's efforts on hunting one small ship. Dr. Nithara watched the battle from her research station with a mixture of amazement and sadness. She was witnessing the first defeat of a Vrex pack in galactic history, but also the destruction of something that had taken millions of years to evolve. The pack will never recover from this, she told her research team. Once the psychological foundation is broken, it cannot be rebuilt. They will remain individual hunters, but they will never again function as a true pack. The rescue fleet began its withdrawal from the Kepler 442 system, successfully escorting all evacuation pods to safety. The Vrex hunters made several attempts to pursue, but their lack of coordination made them ineffective against the organized retreat. Taemin's ship was the last to escape, finally outrunning Kethvar's pursuit as the Alpha's vessel reached the limits of its operational range. The pack leader's final communications were incoherent roars of rage that carried no tactical information, only the frustration of a perfect predator who had been defeated by prey he could not understand. The aftermath of the rescue sent shockwaves through the galactic community. News of the successful evacuation spread rapidly, carrying with it the impossible truth that a Vrex pack had been defeated not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through psychological warfare. Military academies across the galaxy began studying Taemin's methods, trying to understand how one human had accomplished what entire fleets could not. The answer lay not in any particular technology or weapon, but in the uniquely human ability to understand and exploit the psychology of other species. Dr. Kim Jae-won's final report became required reading for anyone studying xenopsychology or interspecies conflict. The human success demonstrates that intelligence and understanding can overcome seemingly impossible physical disadvantages. By turning the Vrex Pack's greatest strength into their weakness, Min proved that any predator can become prey when faced with a superior mind. The Kepler 442 system remained under Vrex control, but the psychological dominance that had made the pack hunters seem invincible was broken forever. Other species began developing new strategies based on Min's approach, learning that even the most perfect predators had vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Min returned to his work as a freelance tracker, but his reputation had evolved. Beyond simple talent for finding missing things, he had proven that humans possessed something unique in the galaxy, the ability to hunt any predator by understanding their deepest psychological foundations. The story spread throughout human space and beyond, becoming a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, not superior technology or physical prowess, but the evolved ability to understand and predict the behavior of any opponent through empathy, observation, and psychological insight. When representatives from other species asked Min to train their people in his methods, he accepted with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had proven an important point. Humans were not the strongest or fastest or most technologically advanced species in the galaxy, but they were the best hunters of all, because they understood that the greatest weapon was not technology or force, but the ability to turn any opponent's strength into their fatal weakness. In a galaxy full of apex predators, humans had proven they were the ultimate hunters by understanding that the mind was always more powerful than claws, fangs, or weapons. The rescue of the Star of Peace became legendary throughout galactic civilization, a reminder that sometimes the most impossible victories came not from fighting harder, but from thinking better. And somewhere in the darkness of space, 7 broken Vrex hunters continued their patrol of an empty system. No longer a pack, no longer perfect, but forever changed by their encounter with a human who had hunted them using nothing more than patience, understanding, and the ancient human wisdom that any predator could become prey.